Aaron Olson, that's a great opening. Just maybe if we banned murder, people would stop killing each other. I'm not sure if we've tried that yet. Apparently, we haven't. So, I'm going to get a little esoteric and philosophical this morning, and uh, we're going to talk about some of the core reasoning underlying certain pieces of our social conversation as they're going on right now. Because yesterday, of course, we covered the uh, the two mass shootings that happened over the weekend, along with uh, the several foiled plots at continued major terrorist attacks. So, predictably, of course, this morning and all day yesterday, but this morning we've got a bunch of just absolute shitheads on social media running off at the mouth about gun control and oh, Republicans are stupid and da 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 da. Let's start with this one. The more educated a population is, the less Republicans there are. That says everything you need to know. You know, sweetheart, uh, I don't think that means what you think it means. Uh, well, there you go. Good call, Aaron. I don't think that means what you think it means. The more educated a population is, the less Republicans there are. That says everything you need to know. Well, numbers matter, right? The actual statistics underlying a claim matter. They matter incredibly, right? Robert Reich hits us with mass shootings in the U.S. per gun violence archive. Okay, so according to the super liberal anti-gun leftist organization, the Gun Violence Archive, you've got 332 shootings in 2015, 383, 347, et cetera, going up a little bit every year. You got a little dip there in 2024. So far in 2025, 392 mass shootings in 349 days. Oh, hey, look, that's actually a pretty substantial drop. I wonder if perhaps there's a correlation there with the number of illegal immigrants that have been stopped at the border and removed, right? Because he's doing a little sleight of hand here, right? And well, I'm gonna hit you with all of the with a few of these real quick, and then we're gonna go through them, because there is a correlated faulty logic involved here. And right here, we've got, I love this meme. Why do you need a gun? This was posted by the Libertarian Party. And as many of you know, I'm not a big fan of the Libertarian Party. I think they're a bunch of basically pseudo-anarcho communists attempting to mask themselves as anarcho capitalists. But why do you need a gun? For tyranny. For up close tyranny, you got the shotgun. For far away tyranny with the hunting rifle. For lots of tyranny, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but then you've got this Boston Smalls, and again, we've got somebody who's completely missed the point. Nope, no fucking way. You don't need to use you don't get to use the tyranny argument anymore. F you, masked secret agents running around the country trampling people's civil rights while the president wipes his ass with the Constitution. Okay, I'm going to be generous here. I'm going to be generous with this one and assume that she's just retarded. She's just stupid. Because otherwise she's lying. The idea that we have masked secret agents trampling on civil rights and just kidnapping random people off the street is ludicrous and absolutely not backed by the facts, right? The facts are we have a very, very serious problem with illegal immigration in this country. One of the things you'll see a lot of recently, and it defeats itself on the merest cursory examination, is this claim that there's a massive spike in measles because... right? It's not the claim that there's a massive spike in measles that's a problem. That appears to be true. But then they hit you with the correlation because we've got an anti-vaxxer in charge of Health and Human Services. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But here's the thing: he hasn't banned vaccines. He hasn't gotten rid of vaccines. He hasn't even compacted your access to them. Access and proliferation of vaccines have not changed in the 11 months since Robert F. Kennedy took that office. There have been some new studies put out to study the various, the aggravating elements, right? Because the way a vaccine works, there has to be something in there that hurts you a little, causes you a little bit of harm, right? In order to activate your immune system so that the immune system notices the dead virus or even live virus in some vaccines and then begins to build a defense against that infection. But the introduction of the dead virus is not sufficient to elicit that response. So there's an agitating agent added. And in many cases, that agent is mercury. And that's something that a lot of people are concerned about. And I'm not here to talk about vaccines this morning. I have concerns. There's a lot there that's worth talking about, but that's a whole other topic. Sergeant Major asked, does any country allow unrestricted immigration? Not to my knowledge. Now, there's 197 countries on the planet, and many, many, many of them are barely countries as an American mind would understand them. They don't have a serious formal central governing authority. They're loosely held together by a handful of warlords. I would go so far as to say those places are easy to get into and hard to stay alive in. Many countries, like, try to cross the border illegally into North Korea, and you will be shot. I mean, and they are not alone in that. So, unrestricted immigration. While Biden was in office, it was a nearly unique American phenomenon. Even Canada, for example, it's much more difficult to immigrate to Canada legally from the United States than anywhere else. It's very easy to immigrate to Canada legally and then overstay your pass, your visa, what have you, in Canada once you've gotten there. And they're very friendly. Canada is very, very friendly to non-white, non-European immigrants, as is the United States, unfortunately, and most of Europe, which, as we've seen with the mass shootings over the weekend, this being a very, very substantial problem. Now, that said, let's get back to these memes a bit. So this one in particular, to start with, not that one, this one. The more educated a population is, the less Republicans there are. That says everything you need to know. It actually does. She's right about that. It actually does say everything you need to know, right? And I want you to think about that for just a moment, and I'm going to bring this one back up for a minute. Rob Reich shares this as mass shootings in the U.S. per Gun Violence Archive, and there's these numbers, these huge numbers, hundreds and hundreds every year, with a massive spike in 2021, almost double what we saw in 2015, according to the Gun Violence Archives, right? And then I bring you back to this. Okay, it's important to ask, underlying this claim, that the more educated a population is, the less Republicans there are. Yeah, what do you mean by educated? What exactly do you mean by educated? And I can tell you almost to an absolute metaphysical certitude that what this person means when they make that claim is that having degrees, having an academic degree, an advanced degree of some kind, means that you are more educated. Have you ever met a doctor that can't cook? I just about guarantee you have, but you may not know that because they are so deeply steeped in their particular specialty that they're almost unable to have a conversation on any other topic. Something that we see famously in the world are people who have extreme levels of extraordinary competence in a single avenue. They're specialized and well regarded in a particular field of academia, and then mistake that competence and education for being an attribute that extends across other fields in which they have not nearly a similar level of study and analysis. Right? Now, you'll get people with multiple interests. Sure, Gordon Ramsay might be able to whip up the best cheeseburger you've ever had, and it'll be a gourmet masterpiece. And as I understand, he also has some mechanical inclination. Ask him about your electrical system, right? And I mean, Gordon Ramsay, I use him as an example because he's one that's kind of out there and in your face, and very much his public persona is very much kind of a rough man's man, and in fact, he's almost taken the concept of toxic masculinity and made it a character persona. I recommend go watch a couple of his kitchen nightmare shows where he's very much, the man in charge, and he kind of pulls out an almost military discipline level of command and control and competence in the kitchen. And then go watch the episode of Hot Ones, right? The show with hot questions and even hotter wings, or hot wings and even hotter questions, right? Where, they sit a celebrity down and they bombard him with 80 billion Scoville hot sauce, and then expect him to answer questions intelligently and coherently while he's suffering literal chemical torture in his face hole. And go watch the one that Gordon Ramsay did, and you'll see he's kind of a bitch, right? And I mean, don't take that the wrong way. I'm not exactly eating ghost peppers like potato chips over here. I like a little spicy something. But you go watch the one with Shaq. Shaq has a response, but he doesn't fall apart and start screaming and cussing. He doesn't feel compelled, as Gordon Ramsay apparently did in his episode, to wipe his ass with a lemon. But Gordon in that one, he's kind of a bitch. So we look at this chick here, and she says, the more educated a population is, the less Republicans there are. Yep. That's right. In a given population, the more people you have who have been crammed through your deep indoctrination system and been told that men and women are interchangeable, that babies aren't human, and so you can dispose of them without moral concern, right? That there is no difference between people of different skin colors, not even culturally, right? That one of the craziest things I've ever heard is the idea that, oh, well, we need a black Spider-Man so that young black boys can see themselves reflected in him. It doesn't matter what color he is. He just needs to be black so young black boys can like him, because white boys have a Spider-Man. Okay, so your argument is that young black boys and young white boys are so different that they understand the world differently when they see people of different skin colors, but that difference is not substantial enough to have an effect on the development of the character that represents that skin color. So white Spider-Man from the Bronx, or I'm sorry, from Queens, I think it is, and black Spider-Man from the Queens have identical historical development stories. That's an argument that defeats itself, because you're simultaneously claiming that they are and are not identical, right? That doesn't make any sense at all. And then you get this one where you've got old Robert Third Reich making the claim that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mass shootings every year. Well, now, hold on a minute. Per the FBI crime statistics, it turns out that no, there are less than 10% of the numbers he's claiming. Well, how can that be? How can that be? Where could you possibly have that divergence? Oh, I see. The gun violence archive includes all acts of violence that include a firearm and 4 or more victims minus the shooter. So we can say, yes, Robert Reich, there are those several hundreds of, quote, mass shootings per year, but it turns out that 90% of them are non-white, gang-related, drive-by shootings, retaliation murders, right? Now, old Robert Fourth Reich here wants us to conflate all of those shootings. Yeah, Crackshot mentions most mass shootings happen in Chicago, a gun-free zone, and Chicago is exactly the example that I'm about to use here. Actually, it's interesting you pulled that one up, Crackshot. The vast majority of them are gang-related, drive-bys, retaliations, et cetera, and happen in inner cities with extreme gun control measures, where the populace at large is largely unarmed. Right? You don't see drive-bys happen where I live for so many reasons, not least of which is you need to buy an extra tank of gas to get here. There's just no way you're gonna open and spray on my home and hit anything substantial in a drive-by because, well, there's trees in the way. We're not pressed right up against the road where you're going to grease a bunch of people on the stoop. And oh, by the way, your first shot better land or you're probably going to get chewed up. Right? That's, we shoot back out here. In fact, there is a non-zero chance that we just happen to be already shooting at things when you drive by, because that's something we do for fun out here. And right, nobody's going to call the cops and say, "Hey, I hear gunshots up the street." Not because they think it's normal to hear gunshots up the street. There's nobody there to hear it. It's a very different world, right? Now, the area I live in could definitely be considered to be, shall we say, lower income on average. I moved out here on purpose to be away from noise and a lot of industrialization. If I need to do business with people, I can go to where business is done. I'd rather business not come to me, right? I don't eat where I shit and vice versa. I would rather go shit where somebody else eats and steal their cheeseburger. Now, that said, when you look at poor communities by ethnic breakdown, you find something very interesting. Take Appalachia, for example. Appalachia is largely homogenously white. Lower income, poor, almost no gun violence, almost no retaliatory violence. There's no gang warfare, et cetera, because it's just one big dispersed, nearly homogenous ethnic community. Then you get into Chicago. Chicago is a great example. Gun violence is massive in Chicago because only the criminals have guns. The law-abiding citizens, if there are any there, have been largely disarmed. And then you have this interesting phenomenon where you have blacks, Hispanics, et cetera, Asians, et cetera, non-whites, and a little block of whites, but they're all crowded into this one kind of depressed socioeconomic region. But then within that region of essentially perpetual poverty, perpetual, you have perpetual government dependency, welfare state dependency, a lot of broken homes, a lot of single mothers, which really translates to, the boyfriend, the most recent baby daddy lives here sometimes, but we're never going to get married because then we lose our welfare benefits. You get a lot of that in the poor part of Chicago. But here's something that's really interesting: racial segregation, or what the authorities call micro segregation. So you'll have a black block, not like Antifa, a block where everybody is African American, where everybody is Negro, black, right? And so you'll have the black block, and then you'll have the Mexican block, and then you'll have the halal block, et cetera, right? So you get, all the poor people, boom, and then the poor people are like a quilt, where you've got the bright red square and the bright blue square, and they self-segregate into those smaller communities in those regions. And where does the violence happen? It happens where the borders touch, because they're engaged in violent retaliation, in gang politics, right? Shotgun diplomacy over physical territory. And as we've discussed many times on this show, in war, and that's what's happening there, is war. Don't kid yourselves. In war, there is only victory when a pair of boots holds ground and, through violence of force, refuses to cede entry to that territory. And that is something that the gangs understand. And the vast majority of gun violence is centered on that. And of course, when they throw out the statistics and they try to say, there's X number of gun deaths in America every year, you also have to remember that some 53, 54% of those gun deaths are suicides, and should not even be considered. The gun should not even be considered a factor there, because it is not, having or not having a gun does not appear to be a factor in whether or not someone engages in that awful activity. Jesus Christ. It's Christmas time, and that's a topic I have a hard time with for various reasons. We're gonna step right back away from that. So where are we now? That instinct, and it is an instinct. In fact, it is a pre-rational survival heuristic to self-segregate, to tribalize in that way. Right? Rationality and civilization are irrevocably interconnected. Tribalism, oikophilia, the tendency to prefer one's most like kind, is a very base, natural, pre-rational, pre-civilizational survival heuristic. These people look like me, we can get along. Those people don't look like me, they might be a threat. In fact, these people look like me and they grunt like me. But those people whistle, and I don't know what the fuck that means. Right? These people have the and we can talk with each other. But homeboy over there with his I don't know if he wants to buy a pig or suck my ass. How do I have a conversation with that? Pre-civilizational, pre-rational, heuristic survival instinct. Well, here's the problem. That level of civilization that we enjoy currently, to a lesser degree than we have in the past, admittedly, has been under attack by academicians with, Marxism, proto-Marxism, neo-Marxism, gay race communism, all of that, And it all comes back to collectivism that seeks to God damn it. You know, I'm half convinced that my dad watches this show just so he can try and drop shit in the chat that'll distract me and break my train of thought. Because you got me. I lost it. I lost my spot. Okay, gay race communism. Okay. All of those infectious concepts that essentially go back to Marxism, or really they go further back as go back sometime and watch the deep dive we did on the history of China, which is essentially 5,000 years of proto-Marxism, proto-communism, and you'll find you can look at what's happening today as a result of academicians infecting the youth with these ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, Marxism, cannibalistic communism, and the like. It all has to do with the Kierkegaardian leveling process that Mario and I discuss so frequently on the air, where you collapse all differences, all valuations into this gray, genderless mud of devolved humanity. And nature abhors that. Nature very much abhors that. And so, as our rational civilization is having its rationality eroded by identity politic and the use of shibboleths and virtue signaling to identify membership in ideological tribes rather than biological tribes. Crackshot says communism equals the Borg. No, actually, the communism is far worse than the Borg. That's a good note. Let me jot down a note there, because that's something I could spend some time on. Communism is worse than the Borg. The Borg represents a sort of idealized version of what communism could be, and make no mistake, in the best case scenario, right? The best outcome for communism is the Borg. And that's why communism itself is worse than the Borg. Because the Borg is that utopian communist endpoint that is unattainable. It's absolutely out of reach. It's not possible. But the road to achieving that outcome is futile and brutal. Absolutely brutal. And that's why you said resistance is futile, you will be a communist. Eric Erickson, I'm not a big fan of his, but he was always he was right when he said the words, "You will be made to care." That's probably the most intelligent thing that chunky shitburger has ever said in his entire life, and it is intelligent. You will be made to care, and that's what the shibboleths are about. Even just recently, we were at a soccer game for my little boy, and one of my daughters was walking the track, and some kids around her age started screaming 6-7 at her, 6-7 at her. And she didn't know what the hell they were talking about, because we homeschool our children. We don't let their minds get infected with that kind of garbage, right? So you got some local retards that went to the local public school, and they think it's clever to assault someone with a shibboleth. And that one's especially pernicious. I could probably do a whole show on that particular sociological assault. But when we look at the way that these people say things, so often we're seeing information being collapsed and conflated to create so that they can lie without explicitly lying, right? When Robert Reich says there were this many mass shootings in each of these years, he's lying. And understand what I mean when I say he's lying, right? I said I'd give the other one, this one, the benefit of the doubt and just assume that she's retarded. She's just stupid. She doesn't understand the things that she's saying. Rob Reich does not enjoy that level of charity. I will not give him the benefit of the doubt in this. I'm certain that Rob Reich knows exactly what he's doing. He is completely certain or completely aware that his numbers are a blatant fabrication, a gross conflation of unrelated data to create an unsupportably false claim. He's lying. Why is he lying? Because he is part of that class that wishes to see you flattened and weakened, gray, genderless blobs who are harmless, not peaceful, harmless. He seeks to declaw you, to defang you, because he wants you flattened. Make no mistake, every time the argument is made for gun control, the argument that is being made is for enslaving the human race. There are more slaves alive in the world today, on Earth, currently, than at any point in history. Right now. Now, very few of them are in the United States by, per capita by comparison. The vast majority of them are in Africa, India, and China. There are slaves, there are actual, I shit you not, slaves in America today. But the vast majority of them are in Africa, India, and China. And we saw, while Obama was in office, we saw the resurgence of open-air slave markets in parts of Africa. That's a thing that's happened. But everywhere in the world today that there are men who have something that even resembles what we would think of as liberty or freedom, that is only true not because America is the strongest military in the world, and we enforce that to a degree where we can, but because the American citizen is sufficiently armed to keep the government in line and maintain its dedication to the principle of liberty. That fact is being constantly eroded by these sociopaths who have been entrusted with your government and the education of your children. So this silly little bitch telling you that the more educated a population is, the less Republicans there are. She's right. She's absolutely right. The more communist propaganda a person has been exposed to, the less likely they are to concern themselves with the Republican form of government and the defense of individual liberty and prosperity for all. Yes, the more time a person has spent in the education system, the more likely they are to be a genderless, gray, harmless blob of sociopathy and degeneracy, utterly and completely dedicated to the disintegration and leveling of the entire human race. That's the thesis and that's the conclusion this morning, guys. I know it got a little heavy there, a little esoteric even, but I appreciate you guys hanging out with me this morning. If you haven't already, do go check out. It was one of our shorter episodes, our shorter deep dives, but we did Santa Claus over the weekend, and we talked about several different films that portrayed Santa Claus as a violent creature, but in a certain way, because a good man cannot be harmless, right? And we made the thesis essentially is this: in order for a man to be good, he must be capable of extraordinary violence. A man cannot be harmless, weak and harmless and toothless and still be morally good. At best, at the absolute best, a harmless man can be morally neutral, and that's being very generous. Because in order to have become harmless, he had to make morally weak choices. And moral weakness, that is where evil lives. Right? The devil doesn't get you to sign your soul away to make a deal to give you $1 billion or extraordinary talent, etc. Look at the police. Look at the police that enforce the lockdown rules. Their deal with the devil wasn't, hey, if you'll go out there and shut down people's businesses and destroy their livelihood, we'll make you millionaires. No, it was, you're going to go and ruin these people. You're going to take your gun and ruin these people. Or we're going to take away your livelihood and leave you and your family to starve. That's the deal with the devil that they made. Right? The ICE agents that were complicit in Joe Biden's global human trafficking operations, they weren't offered bonuses. They weren't offered mansions. They were threatened with the loss of their livelihoods. And they made the morally repugnant and weak choice to capitulate rather than to seek an alternative or to fight back. A weak man cannot be morally good. Simply isn't an option for him. So, before I cut this short, and I know I'm running a few minutes, I know that there's a delay, so you're hearing this. I'm saying this a few minutes before you hear this, so I'll try to keep running my mouth. Let me know what you guys thought of the live stream that I rated you to yesterday. The, what was it, LFA, Live from America live stream. Those guys were all right. Little more religious than I usually am interested in, but not offensively so. So, yeah, my new tooth is doing great. It's right there. Yeah, thanks for asking, guys. It was in and out. It was quick and easy. But yeah, let me know what you thought of that one. And I guess, well, hey, actually, here's the Steel Toe Morning Show. I'll raid you guys over to this one because it looks like they have the Erica Kirk and Candace Owens. Aaron Olson says you keep rating us to Bible thumpers, LOL. I think it was the same Bible thumper both times. And that they're okay. But the fact is, we're live so early that I've only got so many options to choose from to send you guys to. But I've got to do 5 of them a month now. So I'm sending you guys over to that said that my raid was invalid. So let me try that again. Raid. Here's the Erica Kirk, Candace Owens. Oh, they are not accepting raids. Okay, well, screw them. Then we'll find somebody else. See, like Alex Jones Network. Let's try out Patriot TV. Yeah, we'll raid Patriot TV. See if they're worth a watch. We'll go check these guys out for a minute. Confirm raid. That gets 3 under the belt for the month, and I can go ahead and wrap up on that. Karma Cathedral says the delay is on your stream, but when you raid, it's instant. That's good. That's actually good. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it there. I've got to get out the door and go serve a contract this morning. So thanks for watching. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow. Oh, before I cut it off, I'm going to drop a link to this. I did a chat with Chat GPT this morning, pulling statistics on race and crime and gang affiliation and regional compartmentalization. So I'll drop a link to that Chat GPT chat in the pinned comment, so you guys can go check that out if you want to. It's a long read. There's a lot of data there, but I think it was very interesting. And I'm funny. And since I'm funny, my Chat GPT is also funny because I've programmed it to be so. So be safe, guys.